Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Dr. Rasi Explains. This is Dr. Rasi, and today's topic is molecules of life, which is also called the structure and function of large biological molecules, also macromolecules, MACRO. So let's get started. So this is in our concepts of biology. This is actually chapter 2.3. Entitled Molecules of Life. So we have student learning outcomes. So you can read about these SLOs here in the very first slide. So what are molecules of life? So we have four major molecules here: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. Each of these four macromolecules, three of them, three out of four has monomers. So they are true polymers. So carbohydrates, they are made of monomers called monosaccharides. Proteins, their monomers are amino acids. And then nucleic acids, their monomers are nucleotides. And their function, so carbohydrates, they are energy source. Lipids, they are energy storage like fats or membrane components also as well. And proteins, their function is enzymes, transport, movement, receptor, defense, structure, storage, hormones, many functions. And nucleic acids, heredity, like genetics, various functions in gene expression. So let's get started. So now you know macromolecules, that molecules of life here. So they are made of monomers except lipids. So we know lactose, and you might have heard lactose intolerance. So some people have inability to properly digest lactose, right? That's called lactose intolerance. So because they cannot really break down and absorb the lactose in their small intestines, it requires bacteria in the large intestines, and then it might produce a gas and a discomfort, and actually that's called lactose intolerance. So those people might avoid food with lactose, or they might take lactase, that enzyme, the pills with the food. So, okay. So we already know the organic compounds, and we talked about these in last chapter. So carbon was, we already covered the carbon. Carbon is actually the king of the periodic table, has 4 valence electron, and actually can make 4 bonds with other molecules or another carbon molecule, carbon atom. So and we already talked about this carbon chemistry. We also call organic chemistry. These we already covered. We already talked about these. Now, what is that carbon chemistry related to the macromolecules or this chapter here? So again, these molecules, these 4 molecules, they're mostly polymers. That means they are complex and large and made of smaller building blocks. They are called monomers. And they might, there is something called a dehydration reaction, which means dehydrate, right? Dehydrate, so you remove water, you dehydrate. So, and if you do that, you actually link 2 monomers together by removing a molecule of water from this reaction, which is called dehydration reaction, right? So there is another reaction, which is the opposite of dehydration, is hydrolysis. So hydrolysis is actually, you have a large molecule and you try to break the bonds between the monomers, and then you add water to this molecule, like you see here in this figure. So this is, you can see here, hydrolysis in the B here. You add hydrolysis to this polymer and you break it down to smaller pieces. Or opposite, dehydration, you actually remove water and you force these 2 smaller pieces to build a longer polymer, like you see here. So, as I mentioned, there are 4 large macromolecules: carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So now you know. We will start with carbohydrates, right? So that's the first group of molecules or macromolecules. So what are carbohydrates? So they are sugars and polymers of sugars. Okay, so they might be small sugar molecules in energy drinks, or long starch molecules in your pasta or French fries. They're all carbohydrates. In animals, it's for animals, carbohydrate is a primary source of energy, right, in their diets. In plants, it's more a building material in plant body, like we will see, like cellulose. Okay, so now we know carbohydrates is a class of one of the 4 classes of these big large molecules. They are made of monomers, but what's their monomer? Their monomer is monosaccharide. So write it down. So monosaccharide, right? So monosaccharides are their monomers. So they are simple sugars, cannot break it down more than that. Example, glucose, which is the sugar in the blood stream, and fructose in many fruits. So examples, right? So these are monosaccharides. Glucose and fructose, we know everyday life everywhere, right? So they are in honey as well. So they are isomers of each other. You can see here how carbonate, which is basically here at end, here is not in the end in fructose. So same molecular formula, different structure. So we call this isomer. So you might remember. So we talked about this, but it's good to remember some of the isomers. Isomer might be structural, like we just seen, or it could be geometric, like cis-trans, like this red guy here, hydrogen moves, like the one on the right, actually it moves down or up around a carbon-carbon double bond. Or enantiomers, which is right-handed versus left-handed, right? Right-handed, left-handed, if they overlap, but they are really not exactly the same. They are isomers. They're called enantiomers. Okay. So continuing monosaccharides, so glucose is our one very important monosaccharide, like in our blood. Disaccharides are, if you put 2 monosaccharides together, combine them, you make disaccharides, like lactose or sucrose in sugar, like you see here, or maltose. These are di. And polysaccharides, these are the larger carbohydrates. For polysaccharides, so examples like glycogen in animals, or starch in plants, cellulose in plants. So these are actually large polysaccharides. And almost all carbohydrates are hydrophilic. They love water. So next group is class number 2, which is lipids. Lipids are hydrophobic, opposite of carbohydrates. They don't like to mix up with water. This is how a lipid look like. You see it's made of a glycerol on the orange side, I mean the red kind of area here, glycerol alcohol, and also made of fatty acid tails, like you see 3 of them connected to glycerol here, 1, 2, 3. So fat or triacylglyceride, they are all actually examples, and like here 3 fatty acid chains actually connected this. What are the fats? Fats can be unsaturated or saturated, and that means no double bonds. Saturated, unsaturated, at least one non-double bond, like single bond. So we have some examples here. Saturated fats, they are all animal-based, like butter, for example. and unsaturated fats, like we see in the liquid oils, like olive oil or corn oil and other stuff. But also we sometimes see something called hydrogenation. They take this liquid oil and they hydrogenate it and to actually make it like margarine. So that's actually that used to be really unsaturated, but then it's hydrogenated. Okay, so cholesterol is another example of lipids, which is more like a very unique compound. So one cholesterol is actually cool. I mean, cholesterol we see like hormones. Actually, for example, is a type of hormone. We see testosterone, for example. This is when we see in male, and estrogen is in a female. And you can read about anabolic steroids, which are synthetic steroids that people might take and misuse and for athletic performance. Okay. So proteins are our next group, which is basically a very large group, more than 1 million proteins actually that's made of amino acids. Okay, so some of their major types of proteins: structural, storage, contractile, transport, enzymes. So proteins are very unique. They not only have structure, but they have folding, which we don't see in other groups. So how they fold, primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, that's actually very, very important. And sometimes we see them all together, more than one folding type. The protein rarely is on primary folding. If we open it like this, like a beads you see here in a necklace, you can see that's actually a typical primary structure. So what are these beads on them? They are amino acids. So, and there is a sequence. There is a specific sequence. Like you see, it starts with lysine here. If you switch this to something else, this protein changes. Okay, so that's primary. Secondary more look like this, like pleated sheets or alpha helix. You need to remember these names. That's secondary structure. And tertiary is more folded, a polypeptide you see here, and then quaternary, more than one tertiary. But what's going on in them? So protein has a specific shape and folding. If you actually heat the protein at high temperatures, like that actually can cause denature, something called denaturing protein, denaturation. It can actually break all these and then open up this structure, which is not very good. Or misfolded proteins that can cause actually Alzheimer's or Metcalf disease or Parkinson. Okay, so nucleic acids are the class number 4, which are made of nucleotides like ATCG, right? And we see them in DNA and RNA and genes, obviously, right? Which you can see here, the genes, specific parts of it, DNA, we see them in RNA, and very, of course, obviously, they determine the protein structure later. So adenine always like thymine, and then cytosine always like guanine. Okay, so A like T, C like G. They always pair up. And these we see them in this double helix. You see here A, G, T, C. There's a specific sequence. And this is how actually more clearly you can see C always like G, A always like T. These are called base pairs. Okay. Nucleic acids, there is also RNA, which is another nucleic acid. And so instead of T, there is uracil there, not thymine. So these are all listed here, all 4 class, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, lipids are not true polymers, so they don't have a real monomers. But other than that, There are four major groups. Here are some examples and their components and their function all listed here. So when you're studying these, so make sure you actually you read the book Concepts of Biology, and this is specifically chapter 3.1. So um, good luck studying this chapter. Thanks for watching, and feel free to comment and subscribe to the channel Dr. Asi Explains, and see you in next video.